Hi, my name is Scott Ambler. I'm going to start by explaining the shirt because there's several good stories behind the shirt that I'm wearing. The first one is I'm a Star Trek fan, if you haven't figured that one out. But the second one, a few days ago on the WhatsApp speaker discussion forum, somebody asked Naresh the question, well, what's the dress code here? What can we wear? And his response is, well, wear whatever you like. And then, so I thought about that and said, well, you know what? I would like to dress as a Starfleet officer. So here we go. But the other part of all of this is, I don't know if you know this or not, but my hometown is Toronto, Canada. And right now, Toronto, Canada is where all of the Star Trek, well, except for the animation, I don't know, maybe the animation's being filmed here too, but all of the Star Trek television shows right now are being filmed in Toronto. So Star Trek, the Strange New World, I don't know if you saw that. There was actually an episode placed in Toronto last season. And the new series, Starfleet Academy, which just finished wrapping a few weeks ago, was also being filmed in Toronto. If you're familiar with the television show called The Boys, also filmed in Toronto, and pretty much most major science fiction shows these days are filmed either there or in Vancouver. So I have a Star Trek pedigree by association, I guess you would say. So what I'd like to talk about is a series of articles and a phenomena, more importantly, a phenomena we've seen in the Agile community over the last little while. And so the title of my talk is The Future of Agile Isn't Shit. And I'll explain where that title came from in a second. But first, I should maybe explain some of my language. I swear like a sailor, but I'm polite and all that good sort of stuff. So anyways, you may have heard that honest people tend to swear, so I'll use that as my excuse. But I really chose that title for the scatological series of articles about Agile. Because it does, it's an attention-grabbing title, as we'll see in a few minutes. So who am I? You might know me as one of the co-creators of PMI's Discipline Agile Toolkit. I'm the thought leader behind Agile modeling and Agile data. I'll talk about those methods right towards the end of this talk today. So I've been in the Agile community for a long, long time, since I guess the very beginning, but since before the beginning. I don't want to be one of those guys that likes to say, well, I was doing Agile before they were calling it Agile. But the fact is, I was doing Agile before they were calling it Agile. And working with most of the original 17 signers in some way or others. That's one of the great things about being a conference speaker, is you get to hang out with really smart people, some of whom eventually do some really cool things. And you can brag later on, well, I used to go drinking with that guy who's now a billionaire. And he never talks to me anymore for some reason. But anyways, that's okay. So, my agenda here today. What I would like to do is basically walk through the 3 articles that I wrote on LinkedIn last summer, I guess it was. And they went fairly viral for a while. So the first one was an article, The Agile Community Shat the Bed. And what it does, and what it was explaining was, well, what the heck has happened to the Agile community? Why are we where we are today? How did it all blow up on us? Right? So I'll walk through that. Then the second article, and that was the only thing I wanted to write. And the reason why I wrote it was I've been getting asked constantly, what the heck happened? What do I do now? I'm an Agile coach. I can't find work. I've been let go. I'm about to be let go. My colleagues have all been let go. My consulting company is tanking. I work for one of the big vendors, and we're being scattered to the winds. We're all being laid off if we can't find work soon. So what do I do? And I was getting those questions asked, and fair enough, right? I'm happy to have these conversations, and I mentor a bunch of people, and I make myself available if I can be available and try to help. But after a while, you sort of get bored. answering the same question over and over and over again. So I figured, you know what, I'm going to write it up, explain what the heck happened, and maybe help people. And the issue was one of a lot of people really didn't understand how the heck this happened, even though I felt it was blatantly obvious what was going on. Then the second article, so then got great feedback from that first article. Instantaneously, I started getting just bombarded by questions, so I was hoping to solve the problem of not being bombarded by questions anymore. Exact opposite happened. And the questions were along the lines, well, what the heck can I do? Right? So you talk about the problem, but what's the solution? So then I wrote the second article a few weeks later. Well, what can Agilists do? What can I do as an individual after, well, the community shat the bed on me, right? How do I survive as an individual? So that's the second section in this talk. And then the third article, and I really wasn't requested to do this, but I figured, you know what? I might as well say, well, where are we going? Where's this going to go? And this is the last part of why I'm wearing this shirt today, not because it's a truly awesome fashion choice, but because it represents, Star Trek represents an optimistic future, right? And right now in the world, we're sort of competing, what is the vision? What is the future vision for the world? And there's at the one extreme, we have Star Trek, everything's going to work out. At the other extreme, we have the Mad Max metaphor, which my good neighbors to the south of Canada are sort of actively working towards, right? Let's make life a living hellscape, and let's do it on purpose. And we're starting to see that right away. And what'll happen is I'll share what I think the future is. It may or may not align with anything you want to hear, but it's mostly positive if you take it in that regard. Excuse me. I should also apologize. I am overcoming the flu at the present moment, so it's a bit, if I start coughing my brains out, it's because I'm dying. So anyways, we'll just leave it at that. So, how did we get to where we were? This image is generated by AI, which makes me wonder what the Google folks are training their AIs on. But, and this was the least offensive image that I generated. So we'll go on from there. So the main message in this section is the Agile gold rush is over. And it's not coming back. So if you have this hope that, I've been a training certification person making grotesque amounts of money certifying people, those days are done. They're not coming back, and there's no scam anywhere near the future, except for some of the AI stuff. I'll talk about that. I should also describe my AI background. I went back to school for 2 years. I just finished up just recently to earn a master's in AI. And I'd made that decision just before the AI stuff all took off. Right? It was more of an issue of, when I made the decision, I wanted to go back to school. It's like I wanted to learn something interesting. I wanted to see if I could do a master's degree again, because it's my second master's degree. But I also just wanted to have fun and hang out with some cool people, learn some cool stuff, all that goes. And then, like a month after I made that decision, everything went nutso with ChatGPT, and that was horrible. That was the worst thing I want, because I'd been through hype cycles before. I was an object guy back in the day. I was doing AI in the 90s as well, but I was doing object orientation in the 90s, and RUP and UML, and then Agile. I did all the big hype cycles, right? I don't want to do another hype cycle again, not interested. I don't want to clean up the messes that will be generated because of all the hype. Been there, done that, not ever going to do that again. So anyways, wasn't too impressed with what happened with the AI stuff almost immediately after deciding to go back into AI. But that's okay. So, what are some of the challenges? How did we find ourselves, how does the Agile community find ourselves in the situation that we're in? Well, part of the thing that's helped tank the AI industry, or the Agile industry, is the certification scams. right? We got, it's embarrassing. We embarrassed ourselves as a community with most of the certifications that we have going on here. We bought those certifications for the most part. You attend a 2 or 3 day workshop. You maybe you might have to write a test that a houseplant could pass, and suddenly you're a certified master, and you're proud of that. What the hell? My wife is a landscape architect. I've got friends who are engineers. I hang out with professional people. I got neighbors who are lawyers. I hang out with real professionals. So if you want to have an eye-opening experience, go out with real professionals one day. Lawyers, doctors, architects, engineers, people who actually had to earn their credentials. And then describe what goes on in the Agile community. They won't believe you. I've done this multiple times. They'll think I'm pulling their leg when I describe the certification processes that we have. They can't believe that any industry would do something like this. They can't believe that anybody would actually be proud of these certs. Yeah, you attend a 2-day course, great. I'm full believer in attending courses and workshops. That's fantastic. I'm not going to run around telling anybody I'm a master or I'm a professional. I just took a 3-day professionalism course. That's what you sound like, right? The real professionals don't buy it. And this is the fundamental problem. And there's like differences of opinions of, I'm perhaps a bit negative about the certifications. And there's differences of opinions of, why this happened. But who cares? At the end of the day, what do the business people think? Do you think the business people trust anybody to do anything after taking a 2-day workshop? It's like, yeah, you learn some good stuff. Good for you. I'm not putting you in charge of anything because of that. I'm not going to take a lot of advice from you for anything because of that. So, we created a bubble, and it burst. So that was a bit of a problem. Then when it came to these Agile transformations, and I should say transformation in air quotes, a lot of it was not a transformation at all. And there's discussion, you can discuss whether or not transformations are a good idea to begin with. If they are, great. If they're not, okay, great too. But adopting a framework, not even adopting a framework, installing a framework is not a transformation, right? And even installing a framework is hard enough as it is, but it doesn't really get the job done other than employing a bunch of consultants and coaches. And I've been a consultant, I've been a coach, fully get it, it's nice to get paid. Totally get that. But that's not a lot of real value there, right? So what I would rather see, I'll talk about this in a bit, is don't teach me how to do a framework or how to work the process of a framework. Teach me how to improve. Teach me how to get better. That's the real value there. So let's think about that. Another challenge that helped to tank the Agile community was a focus on fluff rather than stuff. And the fluffy stuff is, it's important, big group hugs, being collaborative, respectful, that's all great. But if you don't have the skills to do your job, you're still useless. I don't care if you're having a good time, a big group hug every morning, if you can't get the job done. And there was this myth, you can just learn the technical skills. That's no problem at all. Fuck off. And feel free to quote me on that. That is obvious bullshit. It's hard. People go to school for years to become an engineer, and then after doing that, or a doctor, or a lawyer, or a software developer, or many other things, and even after working very, very hard for years, they still come out of it as a junior. And they still have to work many more years. And in most real industries, they have to apprentice for many, many years before they're considered even remotely useful, right? So learning the techie skills is critical, still is, still always will be, and it can be very, very hard. Now we're seeing this sort of a phenomena in AI. Like I said, I went back to school for 2 years to get a master's degree in AI. I would not consider myself an expert. I would not consider myself a master, even though I have a master's degree. At best, I'm a novice. At best. Meanwhile, you got people that are taking 3-day courses to learn how to do prompt engineering or to learn how to do RAG or whatever, and that's all good stuff, but don't really, I can guarantee you they don't understand the implications of what the heck's going on, and that's probably a problem. So we got to do better. Here's a fellow Torontonian, Drake. Unfortunately, might not be something I'm going to be bragging about anymore, given some of his proclivities that have been coming out lately. But what we really want aren't frameworks, but we want context-driven approaches. We want to work in the right way, or the best way that we can in the situation that we face. And that's probably not going to be covered in a framework. Some of the aspects of what you need to do might be addressed by any given framework, but you're going to have to pull ideas from other places to get the job done. You're going to have to apply the right tools, the right techniques, at the right time, to the right extent in the situation that you face. And you're not going to get that from a defined framework. You're certainly not going to get that from a quasi-religious 13-page described framework methodology thingy at all, right? Let alone a highly prescribed, very detailed, huge, wonderful poster framework thingy. Now, it doesn't work that way, right? We've got to have the skills to choose the right tools and the right techniques for the right situation. And that's hard. I'm not saying that's easy at all, but that's hard. Another challenge, the final challenge, is that one of fads. So as your classic Agilist, do I follow a new fad? I went to a conference this week, and one of the speakers talked about this new fad. Do I start doing that new fad, or do I actually do things that have been proven around for a long time that require some real skills, right? Now, how many people here remember the Nokia test? Just to give an example of a fad. The Nokia test. What a load of crap that was. And I was consulting with them for a while as well, right? Nobody ever asked, is Nokia even, I had to actually look up this morning to see if Nokia was still in business. It is. And they make phones, who knew? Not where I don't think I know anybody who owns a Nokia or has for over a decade now. But anyways, not to pick on them, but still, that was a huge fad for a couple of years. It's like this assessment thing that you would do. How well do I rate on the Nokia test? How agile am I? Ooh, as if that was important. Nobody asking, is Nokia a viable company? Do they have a viable business strategy? Do they have a strategy that sort of makes sense, technical, business-wise, whatever, right? And well, we all know maybe that was not the case. But we're all worried about whether or not we could pass the Nokia test. Now, another example of a fad that might, and this is going to hit a bit close to home for many people in the room here, is fail fast. Now, failing fast is, here's the challenge with fads. There is some good stuff there, but there's also some bad stuff, some bad side effects that we don't often talk about. Right? So there's some good ideas with Nokia test, assessing the idea that you might want to assess and maybe you could learn from other companies. There are some good ideas behind the Nokia test fad, but there's also some real nonsense going on too. Fail fast is the same thing. Like failing fast is certainly better than failing slowly. I think we can all agree on that one. We can learn when we fail, that's pretty good. But here's a harsh observation. There's better ways to learn than shooting yourself in the foot. If I do shoot myself in the foot, yeah, I want to learn from that. Okay, fine. But you know what? Maybe I could learn from others. Maybe I could observe, oh, look, here's all these other people failing at this idea. Wonder why. Do I really need to experiment with that, right? Do I need to know? Do I need to try to start, I'm not going to because I know what's going to happen. Do I need to start throwing 3 water bottles around to see if I can juggle? I'll fail at that. I don't need to run that experiment, right? We can do other things with those water bottles, like drink from them. So this is a huge challenge. We would see all these fads just sweep through the Agile community with like no sort of, it would say, yeah, it's a good idea, it worked for me here, really cool name for it, yay, fad. Oh, let's do Spotify tribes, yay, fad, right? And it's weird, like we could, I've often thought of just coming up with a fake presentation of some really cool named thing and putting it into one or 2 conferences worldwide, and more than likely I could start some fake fad. Just making random crap up. As long as it sounded fun. Pardon me? Yeah, we did. We tried to start a waterfall conference in 2007 or 2008. People thought it was real. And it started late. It was just blatantly obvious it wasn't real, except for not every. I used to write a column for software development and Dr. Dobbs' journal back in the ancient times when there was magazines, and I would every year I would write a April Fool's joke column for the April issue. I had a track record of doing this, and I would still get letters from people saying, I didn't know, oh my God, it sounded surreal. I didn't think it was I thought it was a joke. Or I didn't realize it was a joke until the very end when you told me it was a joke. I was like, oh. But anyway, so if you use the Wayback Machine, you can find some really weird, viable ideas, almost viable ideas from that. So anyways, to wrap that up, why did we run into trouble? Well, we caused our own trouble in the Agile community. The Agile industrial complex got out of hand, too much framework stuff, too much certification stuff, not a lot of value, not enough value, not a lot of, like, we overpromised, we underdelivered. Remember, we used to talk about 10 times productivity improvement. Do twice the work in half the time. And people would listen to that, and then the numbers were never there. Right? Spend millions of dollars to adopt a framework, and the value was never there. This is why all these organizations are very unhappy with this Agile stuff now. Agile's become a swear word in most organizations. That's not good. So what can we do? So the good news is there's hope. There are a few things we can do to make things better for ourselves as individuals. I'm speaking at the individual level here now. Now this is a bit harsh, maybe it's time to move on. And I'm seeing that a lot of people are moving on from Agile. They had a good run as an Agile coach or, as a Scrum Master or whatever it is they were doing. Now they've moved on. Okay, good. Good for you, right? Be successful somewhere else. And more than that, and there's some good Agile stuff they can bring to the table of whatever their next career is. But for a lot of people, it's probably time to move on from Agile. Another thing is we've got to add real value. Not just talk about value, not just, big, warm, fuzzy feeling type stuff, but real measurable value that's of value to our customers. Something that's valuable to the business. Not just, well, I helped the team feel good about themselves today. Yeah, that's nice. And how did that affect the bottom line? How does that move the organization forward? Because if you add value and visibly add value, visibly add value is the issue there, you're probably good to go. You're going to be able to retain your job and have wonderful employment, do meaningful work, all that good sort of stuff. But if you're not adding real value, or if you're only saying you're adding value, but management can't see that, then you're going to be a target. I talked about this earlier. If you're going to be an Agile coach, help teams learn to improve. Not learn how to adopt framework X. Not learn how to adopt SAFe or learn how to adopt Scrum or Kanban. Pick any framework you want, don't care. That's not the goal. Should never have been the goal. We should have been learning how to get better. That's a real skill. That's a skill you'll use the rest of your career. If you know how to get better and to help other people get better, that's pretty darn good. So that's what coaches should be doing, right? We should never have been able to get to this position where, with these inexperienced coaches delivering whatever they were delivering. Now, as well, I think we need to recognize we don't need as many Agile coaches as we got. I think anybody in the Agile coaching space is feeling that, right? Very hard to find employment right now as an Agile coach, and that will probably always be the case. So one of the things that I talked about, I had hoped to write a detailed article on this before I got to the conference, but hopefully next month, is if you really want to be an Agile coach, because for some people it's their passion. They really do want to coach teams. They really do want to help. Great. Actually learn your skills. Learn your profession, right? So if you want to be, help organizations get better, well, learn about enterprise design. And that's a huge topic, requiring a fair bit of skill, right? Actually learn your trade. And you're not going to get it from a 2-day mastery course. This is going to take years of experience, hopefully apprenticing with somebody with these skills, or at least sort of bootstrapping with a few other good, smart people, figuring it out within your organization. So if you want to help change enterprises, well, get some enterprise design skills in your toolkit. That won't be the only thing you'll need in your toolkit, but certainly it'll be a good thing. Oh, another Toronto factoid. The original Hulk movie was filmed in Toronto, so if you're a Hulk movie fan. So just to sort of wrap up here, I think Agile has a future. Agile is not dead. Struggling a bit. It's currently on life support. Fair enough. I think we're going to recover. But the Agile gold rush is dead. It's not coming back. Right? So the easy money of, and to be fair, I've been dinging the certifications, but to be fair, there is ample evidence that you could take a 2-day Scrum Master course and get a $15,000, $20,000 annual bump in your salary. No problem at all. No problem at all. So you would have been an absolute fool not to take a 2-day Scrum Master course when there's a very easy raise to be had, right? Until, of course, all the businesses caught on that it was not exactly meaningful. But up until that point, it was a darn good way to get a bump. So, what do I believe the future of Agile is? I believe it's not shit. I believe it's going to be pretty good, but I believe it's going to be different than the past. So, the Agile movement will recover. It just won't be as big, and it won't be this fake gold rush stuff that we've seen. The Agile industrial complex, probably not going to do so well. Good. They got it coming. So, first point I want to make. It's not about manifestos anymore. It hasn't been about the manifesto for a long, long time. All right. Now, the manifesto for Agile software development was written in 2001. It mostly addressed the problems of small software teams of the mid to late 1990s. And to be fair, if you read it now, if you actually stop, and this is an interesting exercise, stop and read it from the point of view of today, and frankly, we won. We won that battle. From a software team point of view, we're doing it. And frankly, it sounds pretty quaint. If you look at some of the principles, we're going to deliver software every few months. I can't imagine delivering that slow. But 25 years ago, that was blindingly fast. Right? So reread the manifesto. It's pretty good. But the problem with the manifesto is who writes manifestos? Terrorists. The Unabomber wrote a manifesto. That guy was a nut job. The Agile folks wrote a manifesto. Those people were, I'll let you fill in the blank. Excuse me. But anyways, if you remember back to if you were around in the early days of Agile, talking about the manifesto wasn't the best way to open a conversation with business. Hi, I'm an Agile coach. I'm here to help you. We have a manifesto. You sound like an idiot. And that mistake, that problem didn't really go away for a long, long time until everybody just sort of until it became an eye roll thing. We have a manifesto. Yeah, whatever, manifesto, blah, blah, blah. You know, this over that. Good for you, right? What's also interesting is the manifesto, for a group of people that, can't shut up about evolution, it doesn't evolve. They agreed to the fact that they're not going to evolve. And fair enough, it's their business, they can do that. I don't know how many of you knew, I think, Todd, you might have been there for the 10-year, try it and update. And it was an interesting event. So a bunch of us went to Snowbird. Many of the original manifesto writers went back. And we were exploring whether or not the manifesto could or should be updated, and if it was a possibility. So it was a great weekend. Some of us went skiing. A lot of great conversations, but it was all over the board. There's just the great ideas, but the thing that came out of it, they were never ever going to agree on changes, which I think is inherently, I think they knew that originally, which is why they agreed never to change it. So at the 10-year point, people didn't, pretty much, pretty obvious things we're never going to come to an agreement around changes. So a few of us went off, wrote our own manifesto. I had a Discipline Agile manifesto for many years. It was awesome, still is. No longer called a manifesto, of course. 5 years ago, if you remember, there was the Heart of Agile set of events around the world, right? It was a month of international talk. There was 200 some odd talks, all virtual around the world, 24/7 for the entire month of February of 2020, if I get my numbers right. No, 2021, sorry. It was fantastic. Several of those talks were about, well, maybe we should update the manifesto. They all went nowhere. Fair enough, right? And if you go poking around, there's got to be another 20 or 30 Agile manifestos written if you want to look into them. So anyways, we're not going to have a new manifesto. We're never going to update the old manifesto. And the time for manifestos is over. That was a wonderful thing, great idea 25 years ago. Doesn't fly today. There's no hope of flying today. And that's okay. Another part of the future of Agile is I think we're going to see, and we are seeing, a return to roots. So we're going to see a greater focus on software development again. And I think that's a good thing. I think the AI stuff is throwing a wrench into that a bit. But that's okay too. That's just some new tooling. We have to learn how to use that. I don't think we're there yet. And I think we're still on the hype cycle as far as AI-driven Agile software development. And I have a wonderful white paper on that if you're interested. I also think, and we saw this in the keynote this morning, there will be a greater focus on enterprise agility. So where some people are going to go back to roots, other people are going to continue on and bring agility to the masses, or at least Agile concepts and Agile ideas to the masses. Better ways of working to the masses. I think that's a good thing, looking at the overall organization as opposed to just a software team. I always like to say that it depends. It's the classic consultant answer to any question. It depends, right? You've got to work in context. So I think we need to get better at putting our techniques and practices into context. When does a given technique work? When does it not work? Why would I want to use it? When would I want to use it? And when would I not want to use it? Right? What's its range of applicability? This is something we did in Disp and Agile. Disp and Agile prescribed, now it wasn't a framework, it was a toolkit. All we did was take techniques and put them into context, giving you advice for when you would want to choose this and when you might want to experiment with a technique to help you make better decisions. And there was Agile stuff in there, and Lean stuff in there, and predictive stuff in there. So it was a hybrid, right? Because it's really all about finding the right way of working for you right now in the situation that you face and being prepared to learn and evolve as you go to improve on what you got. And the challenge is the frameworks, regardless of how well they're written and what they're trying to take on, they work in some situations and they don't work in others. Right? So are you in a situation where a given framework would actually help you? I don't know. Do you know? Probably not. Look at how many organizations adopted these various frameworks and things didn't go so well for them. Not because of the framework. It's really, bash SAFe all you want. Just bash it. What the hell, right? They're big boys. They can take it. It's not SAFe's fault. It's not SAFe's fault. It's your fault. You adopt, if I have to fix a window at home and I use a hammer to do it and I smash the window, is that the hammer's fault or was it my fault? Probably my fault, right? I used the wrong tool for the job. But it's easy to blame the stupid hammer, Hulk smash, right? But come on. So anyways, we got a few problems there. So you got to use the right techniques in your context. So having said all this, I'm going to do the same thing. Right? I choose to practice what I preach. So earlier I talked about how I led the development of the Agile modeling and Agile data methods many, many years ago. You probably haven't even heard of them by now, right? They were big things 20 years ago. Not so much now. That's okay. Well, the Agile data stuff's really taking off. That's nice. But I'm in the process of updating that material, slowly republishing, slowly putting it in context of today, pruning stuff that made sense 25 years ago, not so much today, right? Got a lot of wonderful advice about XML, for example. Whoop-de-doo. So, or mapping objects to relational databases. Whoop-de-doo. Yeah, important stuff back in the day. So, I just want to leave you with this, and I want to take a shot at all my colleagues in the AI space. The next time somebody comes along with a get-rich-quick scheme, you might want to rethink it. You might want to, I fully appreciate you got to pay the bills, you got to feed the kids. I totally get that. I got the same thing, right? But it reflects on you what you choose to do for a living. It really does. It really does. So yes, I'm seeing some get-rich-quick schemes in the AI space right now. I'm seeing consulting companies that used to be really good Agile consulting companies. Now suddenly they're pitching themselves as really good AI companies. Not sure how they would be able to pull that off so quickly, considering you need one hell of a background in data to pull off AI. And I know most of the Agile coaches out there could barely spell data. But other than that, and I've got a talk on Agile and data and AI on Thursday if you're interested. So, be a little wary. Be a little wary next time some quick, and even if you're on the receiving end of it, take my 2-day course to become an AI master. Okay, whatever. I'm sure it's a good course, but take it for what it is. It's a 2-day course, or 3 days. You know, I'll beat up on the 3-day courses as well. But the 4-day courses, those are the magical ones. Yeah. No. Okay, so just to wrap up here. So today's takeaways, and I'll hopefully have time for a question or two. The Agile gold rush is over and it's not coming back. So there's not going to be any more easy money in the Agile space to speak of. Hasn't been for a good couple of years, and good. And you know what? A couple of us were talking about this earlier today. I'm really surprised that this Agile certification stuff lasted as long as it did. I honestly thought, like, and it was interesting. You know, if for those of us who were there on the ground at the very beginning, when some of these blatant scams were coming out around Agile certification, it was a huge topic of discussion amongst the thought leaders at the time. And there's a few of us who were very upset about this blatantly unethical behavior that we're seeing from our colleagues, and we were concerned that this was going to harm the market. Other people stepped back and said, no, 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 nobody's going to fall for this. Nobody's going to fall for this. We don't have to worry about it. And then after a few years of, oh my God, this has taken off, what the hell? Then the rest thought, well, nothing we can do about it now. You could actually speak up. You could show some leadership, which didn't really happen, right? There's a few of us who did. Josh Krevsky, a few others. But it was really, you know, to get back to why the Agile community went where it went, lack of thought, it was a lack of leadership from the thought leaders. We all knew what was going on. We all knew what was going on. Some of us were making grotesque amounts of money at it too. Some of us still are. So, anyways, good for them. Bad for everybody else. So the gold rush is over. It's not coming back. I truly believe there is hope if you're willing to change, and we're seeing that. People are changing. People are recovering from the Agile mess. And in time with hard work, I think the overall movement will recover. It just won't be this gold rushy, scammy thing that we saw. It'll hopefully be something of real value and something that we can really be proud of. But anyways, so thank you very much. Hopefully this wasn't too much of a downer. Do we have time for questions? One or two? Okay. Raise your hand if you've got a question, and a mic-bearing person will come by.
Thank you so much. I think there were a bunch of truth bombs that you just dropped on the room right now, and they were much needed.
Yep.
While you say that the movement will recover, are there any preventive steps that can be taken by the community to not be a part of the hype cycle again? And some examples that come to mind are, there are open source communities that have a board, or they have some sort of leadership that kind of speaks up when things are not going as planned. So do you have any thoughts on how to prevent the hype cycle again? Because we're all human and it might come up pretty soon.
Yeah. There's always going to be hype cycles. Like, there's too much money to be made at whatever new thing. Like, look at AI for a hype cycle. Holy crow. And so the challenge is when you do start seeing hype, counter with facts. Gather with people with similar voices and push them to share real information and to share reality. So when you hear about this magical thing that can happen, if we'll get 10 times productivity from doing this, counter with real numbers. Counter with, yeah, we've tried that, and here's what really happens when you tell the full story, right? So things like that, and there's always, I have seen situations where we did achieve 10 times productivity improvement applying Agile. Was that because of Agile? Hell no. It was because we were being less stupid. Like, just doing anything. Like, I've seen situations that are just mismanaged so poorly that doing anything would be a dramatic improvement. In fact was doing anything was a direct influence. I worked in one organization. We changed the coffee. Literally, we changed the brand of coffee in the cafeteria, and we achieved a measurable 20% boost in productivity within a month from changing the brand from the swill they were serving to something pretty darn good. 20%, because we didn't have people running down the street to get a Starbucks all the time, right? It was crazy, but like changing the brand of coffee. So yeah, when things are totally messed up, you can achieve pretty good results pretty quickly, but it's not because of whatever framework you thought you were adopting. It's just being less stupid is the answer, and which might have been one aspect of the framework. Craig.
Thank you, Scott, for helping us to see some hard truths about the Agile collapse. As anybody who's been out of work lately, and there's many, trying to apply for a job, it's half an hour battling with every ATS system out there. It doesn't look like it's easy to just rock up with a 2-day certification and get a job. And I sort of wonder, although these people have been going out and getting certifications, like you said, why did nobody actually look in the applications as to how long have you been doing this? How effective were you? What outcomes did you lead? And instead they prioritize certifications. How do we change that mindset to ensure it doesn't happen again?
Yeah, it's easy to beat up the HR people, but they're often, in many organizations, they're often overwhelmed. They're not well funded. They're not well funded. They're order takers, and they're trying to help hire throughout the entire organization. Right? So they're looking for buzzwords, right? They tell me the 5 things to look for, and we joke about these job ads where they're asking for 10 years experience in a technology that's been around for 2 years, right? But this is the reality. They're not doing reality checks. They don't have time. They don't have time for this. They're just overwhelmed. They trust their business partners to put together a job requirements and making sense. But the managers are also overwhelmed. Particularly in the software world, everything is so complex. The manager's just overwhelmed with the complexity, with the rate of change and VUCA and BANI and all that sort of stuff, right? And this all gets dumped on HR. So, and then of course you got all the AI stuff involved in HR and weird filtering going on. But it's easier said than done. So reach out to your HR folks and give them a hand if you can. But yeah, it's and if you're looking for a job, you're just one of probably hundreds. I've worked with organizations, they fear putting job ads out because you put out an ad and you get hundreds of resumes when you only really want 1 or 2. So then we're in filtering land, and bad news happens from there, right? So it's really, really, really tough. Anyways, I've been pulled on time. I will be around all week. Don't be shy. I will not be wearing my Star Trek uniform. Live long and prosper. Finally got to say that to an audience. So in a world, one of my bucket list things, finally. But thank you very much, and hope to see you around.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Scott.